I'm your host, Julia Griffin, and I want to welcome you to the Power of Connection. Today's guest is Felicia Giouzelis. She is a master healer specializing in soul-level healing and transformation with the Akashic Records. She's determined to live in a world where there's no suffering, and she currently is teaching a new hands-on healing technique and working with clients on healing their self-worth while preparing to relaunch her Akashic Records training program. Welcome, Felicia.
Thank you so much for having me, Julia. I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, and this is such an interesting topic. For the people who are not familiar with Akashic Records or would like to know more about them, how do you describe the Akashic Records, and tell us how you access them for yourself and other people?
Yes, thank you. So basically the Akashic Records, the easiest description that I have for them is that it's like walking into a big library out in the universe. So just like a library that we have in our hometown, we access the Akashic Records to read our own personal soul's book. So when a soul is created by source or God or universe, whatever term everyone resonates with, our soul is created, but we're also created with a soul book at the same time. And that book is stored in the Akashic Records. So when we're doing anything with the Akashic Records, we're actually receiving the information from your particular soul book. That's how we're able to see where you're at in your life, what things are coming up for you, what things have come up for you in the past that may have bothered you. And really, there's no limitation on what information we can view in the Akashic Records. It's just a matter of what question do you want to ask, and we're able to receive that information from the Akashic Records. Now, how we access them is there are a few different ways. My favorite way is through just a guided visioning exercise. It's kind of like a meditation, but you don't have to go deep in meditation to access the records for anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I do it more through visioning because I like people to use their clairs, so their spiritual senses, to read the records. That's how I teach it. And so, once we do that, yeah.
Well, I was just going to ask, so the Akashic Records would be like our strong preferences for things, the way we might be attracted to a certain time, like a certain period of time, let's just say medieval history, for example, or we might like a certain type of art. And then I guess there are also like stories or images or holographic images of why we feel the way we do in certain situations, like irrational things, like fear or something like that, like fear of water, for example.
Yes, exactly. You said it perfectly. So, and anytime we have something come up, and let's say we've had it from childhood, and there was no reason for it. Let's take the fear of water that you mentioned, for example. If there's a child that has a fear like that going on, but they've never really had anything traumatizing happen in this lifetime with water, then we can safely assume that's coming in from a past lifetime, that they carried that in. And same with us as adults. There are things that we can't remember never having a particular issue. We've had it throughout our whole life, and typically something like that is stored in a past lifetime. And to echo what you just said, yes, you can view the past lifetimes in the Akashic Records. So we want to just make sure we're looking at the root cause of whatever the issue is. And whether it's based in this lifetime or a past lifetime, we can access that root cause in the Akashic Records.
And this is why you might want a guide or a seer or someone who's really spiritually tapped in to help you find out that you really are accessing the right memory or the right cause, I would think.
Absolutely. So it gets easier once you start working with them a little bit. I've actually known people before that were really strong with their spiritual senses, really strong intuitives, and they didn't realize that they were actually receiving information from the Akashic Records, but they were. So this is not something that's limited to only certain types of people. Anybody can access the Akashic Records for information. They're open to everybody.
And so for some people, They may have evolved to the point that this is important, and this may be why they're actually hearing this today. It's time for them to start clearing some of these past lives, or at least understanding why they feel the way they do.
Absolutely. I find that anybody that's drawn to the words Akashic Records, or even listening to an interview like this one, the records have something for them, or they're being drawn for some particular reason. So it's always good to just go exploring and seeing if there's something there for you, because if you're drawn, it's still like with anything in life, what you're drawn to has a message for you in some way.
Mhm. Okay, so you said that you did a light meditation to get answers or information. Do you have guides that take you there, or you just sort of go through your higher self? I mean, do you see it or hear it or feel it? Does it come to you as images or words?
All of the above. So the visioning exercise that I do will actually take you through a process where your energy gets cleared. And I also work with archangels a lot. So and I have these in recordings for my clients. So we just walk through a process with the archangels to get our energy super clear before we're going into the records. But when we get to the door of the records, there is an Akashic Records guide that's standing there. And especially when you're new to working with the records, you always have to go in with a guide, because they want to show you what to do, what's appropriate, etc. So there's always a guide that's specific to the records, and it's helping you in particular. And it doesn't mean you'll get that guide every time, but usually we have one main guide that's coming through. When we do get in the Akashic Records, the first thing we do is pull the soul book. So there is a librarian in the Akashic Records, and we don't go and pull our own soul books. The librarian comes and asks for your name, and even if you don't give it, she or he knows who you are. So if you try asking for somebody else's soul book, for instance, and you don't have that person's permission, you will not receive it from the librarian. So that's the point at which all this information that we're receiving when we're seeing the librarian, it's coming in through our clairs, so our spiritual senses. So you're either just going to know the information, or you're going to feel it, or clairvoyance, for instance, you're going to see it in third eye, or you're going to hear it. That's mostly how I get the information. That's clairaudience. Right. So any one of those ways, or all of them. I use mostly all of them when I access the records, and everybody's different. It just depends on what their strongest clair is when they're working with the records.
Okay, so here's something I'm curious about. I've often thought that many of us, or at least the people who are older souls, if we want to use that phrase, are really cleaning up a lot of the energy from their past lives right now. So I'm imagining that going through this can help a lot with healing perceptions and trauma and clearing patterns. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest things I work with people on, is looking at their belief system.
Can you give us an example so that's a little clearer for our listeners?
Absolutely. So to give you an example, this is a very recent example. In the last 48 hours this happened. I have a series of recordings that I have for people to download and listen to, and it's with the Akashic Records, and it clears your energy in certain areas of your records. So an example of what a client just went through was she listened to these recordings. One of them was working on your money blocks. And money blocks could just be described as you have certain beliefs around money. And those beliefs are either abundant beliefs that will be strong in your energy and draw money towards you and draw new opportunities towards you, or you'll have beliefs that are keeping you stuck and in these repetitive patterns. So she listened to this first recording on healing your money blocks, and she was talking to her stepfather that day about getting, I believe, a loan to pay off her car. And instead, and she wasn't expecting this, out of the blue, he offered to send her almost $10,000 to pay off her car. that she doesn't need to pay back and doesn't need to get a loan on. The next day, she continued listening to recordings. She was hired to do just a short-term job for someone. She got paid double than what she usually gets paid. So opportunities for her. Yeah, opportunities for her were just coming out of the blue after one recording, and it was so much. And I think what's really profound about this particular example is she actually messaged me this today, and she said, when this happened and I listened to the recordings, I had, I think, $2 or $3 to my name. That's what she said, in all of her accounts. That's all she had left. And all of a sudden now she has over, I think she said, over $10,000 in 48 hours.
So it removed whatever was blocking her capacity to receive.
Absolutely. And with anything with beliefs, that's all we're doing. We're just peeling back the layers of this onion. And, as long as somebody's willing to look at things differently, willing to have their energy cleared, the Akashic Records will take care of it for us.
And this is a really wide generalization, but in general we have beliefs that block the good or that open us to the good.
Absolutely. And it's either is the belief true or untrue. Like if somebody was raised in a household where their parents said money is the root of all evil, right? And they still on some level believe that, they're not going to make money. They're never going to bring in the amount of money that they want and deserve, because that belief is blocking them and blocking them from receiving. So if we clear that belief and we bring in a new belief, their energy starts to clear out, their mind starts to clear out, and new opportunities come in. And it's a process, depending on how many of these unbeneficial beliefs somebody has. It's certainly a process, and we all have things we're working through, but it's kind of hard to pass up an opportunity to welcome more into your life.
Yes, we have to open for more to receive more good and more love.
Absolutely.
Okay, you told us about the beliefs, but let's just take a basic person and say they go through a session. In general, how do they change? I mean, obviously they're going to feel differently, aren't they? Or does that take a while to happen?
It depends on the person. So if somebody, this goes back to the belief system. If somebody comes to me and they're really spiritually open, they've done energy work before, they're willing to try anything, I can tell you, Julia, some of my best transformations have been people that have been at the end of their rope. They never thought they would try something like this. They had no other option, and they came to me. And I see it a lot with people who are really suffering in their health that come to me. And they're at that end, that desperate point, where they're willing to be completely open, and that's where I've seen the biggest transformation. But to answer your question, if it's something like health, if they're really open and they're willing to, and I work with them on this too, because if they have beliefs that are blocking them from healing, that's where we come in and work with that in the records. But I've seen improvements. Yeah, I've seen improvements in health immediately, overnight in some cases, after somebody gets some rest.
It's really like all spiritual work. It depends on how open you are and how much you want it and how willing you are to practice experiencing a different reality.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I think a lot of people, they want to be open, but there's some fear, or they just don't necessarily understand how to do it exactly. Right. And I think, the big part that I love about my work is that I'm able to just call out the person's belief and go, well, this is what I think you believe. Do you agree or not? And by doing that, I can connect with them because they're going, wow, yes, that's something I've suffered with my whole life. So now we have a connection, and I'm able to help them through to release those, because I'm really on the person's side. I want them to get what they want. I want them to co-create what they want. And as long as, someone's meeting me halfway, we're able to clear this and move on. So it's just about being a guide for helping this transition happen, because fear does come up, you know, and it's,
of course it comes
it's
up.
normal.
I mean that's how the belief became stuck in the first place. I do think it's important for people to realize, for people who work with other people, coaches or Akashic Records or whatever you want to call it, if you're in your heart and you see that a person has a problem that they truly want to change, you do feel some empathy about it. It's not like you're sitting there judging it. You know,
I agree
some
with
people
you
are
100%.
afraid it will be judged, but that's not how it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And you wanna always work with somebody that you're resonating with, that you feel called to work with. You like their message, you like what they're about. And I always tell my clients, at least, that's the biggest sign. If you're feeling like drawn to the person, then go explore it. You know, you can always just try a single session and just see how it works for you and how you feel about it. And you never know what huge door of possibilities that could open, and healing.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. I mean, I actually quit my job and decided to do what I'm doing. I was pretty sure I wanted to do it, and I had a really great reading, and they confirmed how I felt, and I went ahead. I sure am glad I did. So, yeah.
Oh, I think
readings
we're all glad, too. Thank you. Absolutely. It's, you know, it's always good to just connect with your own intuition too, but, you know, like in your case, you did that and then a reading validated it, and that's, I think, what I love. And of course, I'm a healer and I'm a spiritual teacher, but I have my own healer as well. So just because you're going to somebody for help doesn't mean that's a bad thing, or there's no problem with getting validated and just double checking and making sure while you're building that bond with your own intuition and getting it stronger, because it is like a muscle, you know, we have to work it.
And it also helps to have support from someone else. And this leads us into the next question. What role do you think self-love and self-esteem play in creating and holding higher vibrations?
Well, love is the highest energy in the universe. So there's nothing above that one. So if you let it be your guide, ultimately that's the highest vibration that you can possibly hold in your own energy. And if we look at it for manifestation or co-creating what you want with the universe, doing that from a place of open-hearted vulnerability is the highest and best place that you can co-create from. So having an open heart is the start. Getting an open heart, getting a heart to open, getting our heart chakra there, right? That takes some work, right? Just depending on what, you know, because when you start working with opening the heart chakra, there are things that are going to come up. But I think while you're in that process, the best advice I have for anyone that's going through this is you ask yourself 3 questions, right, before you respond to a situation or react to a situation. And the 3 questions are, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And I find that, at least personally, if I can remain present enough to ask myself these 3 questions, I'm always able to respond from a loving place for myself and for others. Because it's always good to do things for ourselves, right? And make sure we're feeling in alignment and feeling good. But that doesn't mean we can be unkind to others in the process. That will bring up a lot of unloving energies as well. Things like guilt and obligation and things like that will come in if we know that we've been unloving. But I think that's a start for anybody that wants to start working towards it.
Okay, I know that one of the, I was going to say, tell us about self-esteem, because I know that that's something that you're good at, and everyone can use more of the right kind of self-esteem.
Yes, thank you. I started this by releasing expectation. Now, this is where we hear a lot of people say, oh, you just have to surrender. But the thing is, surrendering is hard. Like, full surrender is hard because it brings up all of your stuff, all of your fears, everything that you've been hiding away in your heart, right? So one of the ways, self-esteem wise, one of the ways that I started to work with mine, and I have just, really high self-esteem at this point, is I started looking at things in my life that were not working for me. And I had just a really honest discussion with myself. And I actually made a list on a piece of, in my journal. I made a list. I drew a line down the center, and I wrote down what's working for me, what isn't working for me. And in the what's not working for me column, there were things that I could change that were in my immediate sphere. And there were things that I had absolutely no control over. And through, time and space to process and healing, I was able to come to terms with there were just some things that I couldn't change. And I went through a forgiveness process. And there's so many resources out there for how to go through radical forgiveness processes, etc. And I did that. Now, the things, of course, that were going really well, I tried to stay in a state of gratitude for those and just focus on those as much as possible and create more of them, multiply them, so that I could get to a place where I just felt really good about the way life was going. And it worked. Like I said, I don't want to make it seem like it's an overnight process. It takes time, but we have to be willing to be honest with ourselves and really look at what we have control over and bring in a lot of acceptance and forgiveness for ourselves and for other people as much as possible.
Agreed. So how would you describe self-esteem? I'm just curious.
I believe self-esteem is the way that you carry yourself throughout the world. It's the way you interact with others. It's are you being kind to yourself and honoring your boundaries while you're being kind to others and honoring their boundaries? To me, it's compassion. If someone's having a rough day, are you making it about you, or are you extending a hand to the person that may not be expressing it in the best or most kind way, but are you able to look beyond that with compassion and see that they're actually crying out for something? So self-esteem to me is really, it goes back to boundaries mostly. Are you able to honor yourself and your needs and your wants while doing the same and holding space for other people?
Beautiful definition. I like it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now, in this one, I'm sort of looking at the energy in the world, but also as individuals, and you see so many people who have a perspective about their experience with life as being a victim or feeling angry or feeling sad. How do they move from that to becoming someone who appreciates and experiences love and happiness?
Okay, that's a great question. So I think the first step in this, because being in a victim energy is a little bit challenging, so we have to work with the mind a little bit at first. And the way we do that is you have to be willing to look at things in your life that are making you unhappy. That's number one. Number two, and this is a big one, and this is where people stay stuck the most, you have to look at these things that are making you unhappy, and you have to own your part. Because if you don't own your part in that drama and that story that's going on, you're giving all of your power away by blaming other people. And when you do something like that, every single time, you're going to be unhappy. So the first thing is we have to own it. It may be the ugliest thing that we have ever owned, but you have to be willing to grab it and go, this thing is very ugly, but it's mine. I own it. Because once you own it, you can change it. So that's step one, I think, for anybody that wants to break out of these habits. Take your power back, stop blaming other people, and own your part in the drama, because we all have a part in everything that's going on. We just have to be willing to own it. The next thing I would say, once you own it, forgiveness comes in very strong here. You have to be willing to let go of the past. The past is the past. Of course, fears come up, etc. Things have happened, traumas have happened, but the decision and intention to move forward is what will help you let go of this. And it's as simple as saying out loud to the universe or in prayer, it's as simple as saying, I don't want to suffer with this anymore. I want to let this go. Please help me. Something like that, the universe can start working in your favor. And then, of course, it's always recommended if you need help or support, see a healer, see somebody that can help you work through the energy, even counselors, therapists, whatever it is that you're resonating with, call somebody in to help you work through it. But I think the first critical step is owning your part in it.
Oh, I agree, because we energize things simply by thinking about them. So if we have that kind of identity in an area of life, and I'm sure everybody has it to some small degree in some area of life, if you think about it, you're energizing it. So you have to learn to think about it in a different way. I mean, there's no way around that piece.
I agree with you 100%.
And I would say, too, about love and happiness, we've been talking about it the whole time, and just thinking about it or hearing people talk about it or listening to things about it, it does help.
Absolutely. And I think part of it, too, is like we have to, and this happens with when you've been working on self-improvement and healing yourself and letting these things go for so long. Something that happens sort of naturally over the course of your journey is that you start taking things a little more lightheartedly. So when you're new to it, things can feel very heavy, the emotions can feel overwhelming, and it's basically because we don't have a baseline for bringing these emotions up and in a healthy way to release them. So they often come out in a very reactive type way. Whereas when you're working consciously and consistently on letting things go, you don't really have that same issue. And over I don't know, it depends on the person, but let's say a year or more of working towards these things, you're able to sort of go, and this is where I'm at, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, that's an interesting thing that's coming up. You're able to observe it from the outside of it. So you don't necessarily feel attached to what's going on. You're able to look at it objectively and go, that's an interesting pattern that I'm repeating. I'm going to need to look at that. And it does get to that point.
Yeah, or you think, I don't know what it is, but every time this happens, this whole pattern comes up. Gosh, it must be me.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Or sometimes I'll think I don't know what to do about it yet, but I can at least observe it. And the funny part is if you do observe it, it's not as bad the next time around.
No, it's really not. And I find I'm someone who always goes, I was never really into prayer. I was raised in a very religious household, and I really strayed a lot from that. But more recently, in the last 6 months or so, I have been very heavy into prayer because I just pray to the universe. So I find that if I do that before bed, I may not know what the pattern is. I may just know that I'm bothered by something, or I have certain feelings that are making me really unhappy. And if I pray for myself to receive clarity and guidance from the universe on how to release this and what this is, I guarantee you every single time I wake up and I have additional clarity, or somebody reaches out and says, hey, are you doing okay? And as it turns out, that person can help me with whatever it is that I'm struggling with. So we're always receiving guidance and signs, but we have to ask for the help.
Absolutely. Otherwise, a lot of the time, we're not on the right vibration to see the signs and the help.
Exactly. And I think just the law of free will, right? The universe can't intervene. They can only intervene in one case. If we're going to be hurt and killed, they can intervene only then. Every other time, if we need or want help from the universe, we have to ask. And so get in the habit of just asking frequently, just all the time. Ask for help and just make that a habit where you're co-creating with the universe. They're on your side.
Exactly. That's such a wonderful thing just to even hear you say it. It's so happy.
Oh, thank you.
So just to sort of go over a little bit of what we've said, so we could use the Akashic Records as a way of finding the cause or the truth beneath our feelings. And I know a lot of times that will clear a problem just to know why you have it. But I think that you're also saying that we have to grow in self-esteem and self-love from this point. Is that correct?
Well, they do both. So the records will help us locate the root cause of whatever issue it is that we're experiencing. And once we know where it came from, we can work it through. Now, they can help with guidance and insights on how to love ourselves through the challenges. So really, it's both. I have gone into the Akashic Records before and asked them, what is the most loving thing that I could do in this situation? I've actually asked questions like that of the records, and I've received guidance on the best path that I could take, not just for me, but for the other person involved in the situation. The universe won't answer a prayer that's just for you only that might harm somebody else in the process. So the way to approach it, even with the records, is what is the highest and best outcome for this? What is the best way for me to approach this that's a win-win for everyone involved? So if you walk in with that kind of intention, they're going to give you a situation that's going to make everybody happy.
That sounds wonderful just to hear it. And it's wonderful, too, to be able to ask for love for everyone involved in a situation.
Absolutely. It's always the best way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you ask, even if you are asking for something for yourself, it is helpful to put in for everyone or for my best and highest good. It does make a difference in how these things manifest. So I'm a little curious about your worldview. How can you, what's your view of a world with people who have higher vibrations and live in a place of heightened self-esteem? What would that be like?
Gosh, what a great question. I think it would be a lot of collaboration, and we would stop seeing competition. I think we would see a lot more sharing and bartering. So somebody's growing a vegetable that you want, and you're not growing it, but you have potatoes that you could share with them, like in the old days, right? We'll see a lot more of that. I think we'll see starvation. I just feel like that's going to be one of the first things to go when we all start holding a higher vibration, is starvation, helping one another, making sure everybody's fed and cared for. I think that's one of the first things. But I also think with animals, we're going to see a lot less suffering with animals as well. That's just going to go from human to our animal friends as well, caring for them more. As far as the world and how people interact with it, I think we're going to see a lot more traveling. I think we're going to see a lot less of these type of work environments where it's like a cubicle, really strict protocol and practices, things that are very draining to us. We're going to see less work in general. Work hours are going to be changed, or more people starting their own businesses. I think we're going to see a lot less resistance from people on trying new things, because what will be happening at the same time is when people start making these changes, we're going to have more love of life, laughter, playfulness, and the biggest one, creativity. So I think a lot more people are going to start following their passions, doing what makes them happy, and really creating their ideal life.
Sounds wonderful to me. I've so enjoyed talking to you, but would you please share your website and any upcoming events you have for our listeners so they can find you?
Yes, absolutely. My website is FeliciaMarieG.com. And I actually have a free gift for everyone for listening today. It's a course on how to connect with Archangel Michael for guidance, healing, and a lot more. I even show you how to work with crystals to connect with him. So you can visit gift.feliciamarieg.com to download that. And for anyone that really resonated with what I said today and is interested in learning how to read their own Akashic records and heal them, I'm relaunching my course soon on how to do that. So if you visit my website, again, it's FeliciaMarieg.com, you can get on the waiting list for to be notified when I relaunch that course.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you again. It was so incredible to talk to you today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. I really enjoyed it.